Hello, Matt. Welcome to the Overseas Athlete Podcast. Thank you very much for joining me.
Morning, Chris. Great to be on. Thank you for inviting me. I'm 7 a.m. here. I think you're a couple of hours ahead.
We are, yeah, we're 9 a.m. now. We're based on the Gold Coast here in Australia, so
That's another benefit of being in Asia then, right?
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah, time zone's not too bad. So I know you have a very well-travelled football past. So what I'll get is if you want to dive into, where you started, obviously in England, where you are now, and then we can have a bit of a run into sort of how you got there and all the ins and outs and the fun story I've got no doubt that you've got.
Sure. Yeah, I started in England as a player, semi-professional, not a decent level at all. And I just started coaching grassroots. And around the age of 27, 28, I fell out of love with the game. I trained to become a personal trainer, fitness coach. I was living abroad already in the Middle East. Ended up getting my degree as a mature student as I turned 30. And then I came across to Taiwan, a little bit by default. But I came to Taiwan, started out teaching, PE teaching, and then I got back into football. Obviously, I could have. I'm just cooking up the story, but I got into coaching again. Ended up coaching at the top tier here in Taiwan, the Premier League. And then from there, I went to the Philippines top league professionally, and then China, Ghana as well in their Division 1. And it just carried on from there. And then since I've took a step back from coaching, especially professionally, but I still do some grassroots stuff here and in schools and around the community. And it was a bit of a whirlwind in the past 5 or 6 years. I've had a few opportunities to get back into pro coaching again, which we'll probably touch on in a little bit, which didn't happen for certain reasons or another. And that's me. And that's probably evidence to show what can happen quite quickly if you are to move abroad in terms of moving away from Europe or Australia or the States or in England into Asia as well.
So your journey, I guess, from England to overseas was more of a teaching one to start with, rather than moving specifically for football.
Yeah, I originally had planned. I did all my English teaching qualifications so I could go into schools and teach English, and I was going to head over to Thailand. A couple of things went wrong back home in the UK. I went to Dubai, and then I ended up just getting a ticket to see my friend in Singapore. And then from Singapore, I started researching probably the best happy medium country in Asia to move to. So that would be in terms of living costs, experiences, crime rate and safety of the country, and the salary you could get as a teacher. And Taiwan basically came up as, in my opinion, the best option. So I went to Taiwan, didn't know what to expect because I'd never really been into, I would say, proper Asia before. And it was a bit of an eye opener, even having worked abroad and in the Middle East and in some testing environments. And I ended up getting a job like most foreigners do as an English teacher. Hated it, and luckily from then I then moved into a PE position, which is more what I could relate to. And from there I just settled. Taiwan became my home, and still here in a decade later, very happy.
Oh, fantastic. So that's what you would class as your base, but you've done a lot of traveling in between that time, as you say, to Ghana, the Philippines, and places like that. But this is where you call home now for now.
Absolutely, and that's one of the main key things for me, or positives in my opinion, for Taiwan. You can travel to different areas around Asia at low cost, and flight duration is also low. So we're only 2 to 3 hours away, an hour and a half away from China, from the Philippines. Then you got Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam. The list goes on. You're looking up to 3 hours, no more than that. And so in terms of, let's say, if you're a coach or a player, basketball or soccer, you can basically make a certain country your home or your hub, and then you can go for trials, which can be a difficult thing if you're coming from, let's say, Australia or Europe, and you're trying to get trials and you're flying over there, you've got to pay your own way, and then you've got to fly back. Where people who have been in Asia, let's say you're in Taiwan, they're just staying in Taiwan. They might fly over to Thailand, come back, fly over to Malaysia, come back, Hong Kong. And employers, whether you're a player, a coach, a general manager, they tend to like people who are already in the region. You kind of treat it as less of a risk because we'll probably touch on this later. If you're coming from abroad, there has been a lot of history where big name players have come across and said, I don't like the language, I don't like the food, I don't like the way people look at me. And then they're gone after 1 week, which is pretty much what you need to prepare yourself for. But surprisingly, a lot of people don't. So employers also see it as a less of a risk if you are already based in Asia, which is what I would say would be one of the key things of doing if you're looking to get out there in the first place.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to put it. It makes a lot of sense, but I know what you mean. So just say if you're a young Australian, you don't want to be too, but basing yourself, is it cheap enough and easy enough to base yourself, say, in Taiwan for just say a 6-month stint, and then from there start your networking, negotiate to try and get trials in all these other Asian countries?
Good question. I would say Taiwan, it could be, but you'll be looking at all the other foreigners and thinking, oh, I can't really do what they're doing because I'm saving a bit of money because I need to wait for trials or wait for an opportunity, where you could choose probably somewhere like Thailand or different regions of Taiwan or somewhere where you can get a visa to allow a few months stay. But it is affordable. I say to people, so in the past and now I help put coaches in certain countries, for soccer coaching, school teachers, and I say to them, if you can get to a country, I use China as an example, because if you go to China and you can't get a job in this sort of field and you're qualified to do it, there might be something wrong with you. It sounds harsh, but it's very difficult not to get a job in China, especially if you're already in the region or in China. So I say, if you got enough finances to let you comfortably survive for 3 to 4 months, I would comfortably say you can get a job. Now, as a football player, it can be different because there's not as many opportunities. You got to go through an agent maybe or a third party. But as a coach, let's say a young coach from Australia, and this is something which I'd like to highlight as well. You could go to China with your qualifications. Australian licenses are okay because I have Australian licenses as well. You could go to China and you can get a job as a coach in a private academy or a school academy, a youth academy, somewhere in China with a livable salary, enough money to put away as well and save, and live pretty well. Eat what you want, go out, do different things around China as well. And that's something that a lot of young coaches can't say in Australia, back home in the UK. In Australia, they might need 2 or 3 different jobs just to make a full-time salary, whereas the opportunity around Asia is here. However, I don't know of many young coaches in Asia, especially in China, where the opportunities are, who are doing that. So I would go to a certain country in China, a certain company in China, where there might be 12 different British coaches, but not one single Australian coach. And it's been like this for at least 10 years now since I've been here. You may get the odd 1 or 2, but it's very rare. And you don't get that big batch of, let's say, Spanish or British who come across to do the same thing.
So what nationalities do you find are there? Is there any that you see in a lot more numbers than anyone else?
Absolutely. There's a lot of Serbians. I would say Serbians are pretty much like the majority of British, where we can adapt to, the British moan a lot, but we can adapt if we're in Asia already. We adapt to the environments and we just put up with it. Employer tells us what to do, we do it, and we try and do it to the best of our ability. The Serbians are very much like that. You get a lot of Serbians because they're very qualified, but they haven't got the opportunities in their own country. You get a lot of Spanish because there's thousands, and this is a scary thing. When people say, I want to be a professional coach, how easy is it to work in the top leagues of Asia? Not very easy, because there's already thousands and thousands of Spanish coaches what can't get a job in their country, and they're pro license or A license qualified, and they head over to Asia. So you go to China and you've got sprinkles of Spanish in different regions. You've got German coaches, you've got British, all very qualified, all following their own philosophy and depending on how well the country is doing at the time, generally in a World Cup or European Championships, you get judged with the same kind of brush. So for people to come in and think they could just get a top job, it's very competitive, which is why it is ideal to get your feet on the ground first, even if you start off, if you may perceive it as a lower level working at a school or a private academy. But it's about getting the experience in country, building your network, knowing people, and that can quickly build into a full-time position with a full-time club as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. I suppose a bit like a player in that sense. If you're moving overseas, and from a few I've spoke to, it's the preparation going from whatever level you're used to potentially a higher or more intense level. One of playing, if they've gone to Asia or Europe, is that preparation of training and conditioning their body. So that makes sense with the coaching, as you say, get there on the ground, get some local experience and keep working hard for an opportunity to come.
And Chris, that's right. And another thing, not going on to the kind of player topic now, not putting down the playing level of regions in Asia or anyone else in semi-pro level or let's say the NPL level in Australia. It's a great region to reinvent yourself and kind of figure out what your key selling points are as a player. You might come as an Australian, you might be mixed Hong Kongese or mixed Chinese or an Australian who wants to travel in Asia or have a different experience. And you might be good in the air, you might be a strong, powerful player, and you might then get somehow get a playing role in China Division 1, in League 1, the second tier. You score 25 goals because they can't deal with marking you, your aerial power in the air. So quickly then, you've then carved out like this key selling point that, oh yeah, this player will score 25 goals in the air. Okay, then you become well known in Vietnam or Indonesia and you end up making this your own region and becoming like a mini superstar, which is more possible to do in Asia than I would say it is probably back home for, let's say, semi-pro player in the UK or maybe NPL pyramid in Australia as well. And you can carve out a career that way. And yes, look, if people are thinking the right way, you may get hundreds of people what think, oh yeah, that sounds great, I want to do that. That's where you've got to build your reputation. You've got to know the right people. You've got to network the right way. It's no good going online in LinkedIn and just writing posts saying, oh yeah, I like that. Oh, can you help me out? You need to build that relationship first. Then quickly, you may find, oh, okay, phone call. Yeah, there's some trials or clubs looking for an AFC player to go and play in Thailand. So some countries have like an AFC quota. A lot of people want to choose, let's say, a New Zealand, an Australian player because they've got that kind of different technical ability or that different thing they can bring to the game, which some local Asians may not be able to give. So if you think about it strategically, then opportunities are there, but it's just about if you want to do it and if you can see yourself living there long enough to enjoy the experience and enjoying picking up the salary, which I might think might be a factor with some of Australians that might not want to move there. They might have a perception that some of the Asia lifestyle isn't as good as they have it back home. Maybe they're too comfortable back home. It could be any of these things.
I think that's definitely a good point because someone we spoke to this week, it was a little bit the same. And it's hard. It can be hard. Do you think about the lifestyle in Australia, in most places? It's very, very good. And if you're going to give that up to go somewhere, where you're thinking Southeast Asia, you think poverty, you think, a lot of people running around with no shoes on, super hot, food isn't great, the culture is very different. It can be hard, but those are the sacrifices, I guess, that you need to make if you want to be a professional footballer or a professional coach and get paid a full-time salary.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're spot on with that, I think, Chris, because Australia, you have got the weather there. You have got bigger houses. You've got the friends, your family. The culture, let's say, I would say is more of a holiday vacation feeling as, let's say, the UK, where if you're willing to travel out of the UK, it's like you're on holiday every day. Like for me, living in Taiwan, and this is one of the main things, or a few of the main things I love about Asia, it feels less stressful. It's convenient. I haven't drove a car for 10 years, which is one of the main stressful things of living in countries in the West. I don't pay attention to politics or the news. I love the food here. I can go out and eat like a Chinese meal every day, and it's healthy, and food is accessible on the street, or the supermarkets are a few minutes walk away. You got the weather, you got beaches, you got outdoor pools, you got everything you need. It's cost effective. You can support your family here. You got more disposable income. So all of these are the things which I find are great, and a lot of other foreigners. So if you find yourself kind of stuck, or you want to change, or you think there's more out there for you, and you want to experience different countries as well as making money in your profession, it's an ideal opportunity. Now, let's face it, some players might come to, I don't know, Thailand or Indonesia, and they might either be a younger player wanting an opportunity, or they've had their best years and they're just winding down a little bit. Both are okay. It's very rare that you have a younger player with great talent, top of their game, let's say in Australia, who's got a load of A-League clubs after them, and then will come to top tier in Thailand or something, unless it's for financial reasons. Now, if you're coming, let's say, to China, and some ex-Premier League players have moved to the Chinese Super League, gone there, hated it, and then moved back, they see the big money at the time. There's still a little bit of money there, but it's not as crazy as it used to be. And they think, okay, I'll have a little bit of that. But people don't think about, like you mentioned, what you have to put up with to get that money. You have to put up with the kind of logistical and admin nightmares, which, you know, things aren't really run as smoothly as they are probably in Australia. You might not get your salary on time all the time. You might have different food at the player camps or the player accommodation or something. There might be different cultural rules you have to abide by inside the club. So you think, great, I could make, let's say, 20,000, let's say US dollar, I don't know, 60,000 US dollar a month. Okay, great. Let's get over there. But you hate being there every single day. You're not going to last a month to pick up your first salary. So you have got to kind of be prepared that, okay, if I am going to get all these great benefits and salary, I'm going to have to try and adapt or prepare myself for what could be out there. And I don't know how or why, but a lot of people don't. And they come there and they say, oh, this is really different. And then they end up going back without getting paid for 1 month.
Have you seen that quite a lot?
Personally, with some younger coaches, I have. With some ex-professional players, let's say Premier League players, I think Anichebe used to play at Everton. He went out to China and he moved around a few weeks in certain different clubs and countries, and then he ended up going back home. So there have been players like this, and you find that, let's say, a lot of Brazilians or Serbian players will go out, and these are players what probably may have had a harder upbringing and can adapt, or players who probably haven't had everything given to them, or have had to work in difficult environments. But look, this is not saying that Asia is like this. I can go into Taipei now, or one of the bigger cities in China, or even Singapore, where there's money everywhere, and you're living a life just like living a great life back home in the UK or Australia, in the bigger cities. We've got big buildings, we've got shopping centres, there's bars, nightclubs, restaurants. You can go to a Gucci shop, Versace. You've got everything you need. You can buy a fast car if you want. You can rent a car. You can go to the best hotels and swimming pools, and you can basically make your lifestyle what you want it to be within reason and within your needs. So there is that side. If you're going somewhere, let's say on a low salary, then you can only live and adapt to what your salary allows. Or if you're paying for dependents back home, yeah, you have to think about that. Is this salary and is the sacrifice worth the amount of money you can send back home? Maybe not, because your mortgage costs may be higher back home in Australia. if you're coming here, you've got no dependents, or you're planning to move your family out to Asia anyway, it's probably more doable. So you can make a really good lifestyle here. Some foreigners come out here and they think they're a superstar. They're probably unknown back home in the country, but everyone knows them in the Asian region, which is very good for your name, which is good for your job prospects, especially as a player. It helps you from move club to club to different countries with greater ease, which means players who are just staying in Australia will find it difficult to break through because there's already players in Australia. Let's say basketball. Basketball is popular in China, Taiwan, Philippines. You can probably be, let's say, a semi-pro or not even a professional player in Australia and come to one of them countries and make a big name for yourself and live like a professional, get paid like a professional and train like a professional. So if you want that dream or that ambition of being a pro player, it's probably more possible to do it in these countries than it is back home in Australia, UK, or definitely the States.
That's actually one of the key drivers around this podcast, and because I'm a big believer in, like, you just take football and take Australia for a quick example. We've got the NPL, and some people might earn decent money in different states. But when you're looking at the A-League, there's only the 12 teams. They've got a lot of foreigners that might come in. You've got the youth team that you want to bring through. So the spots are limited. But the idea behind this was, I know there's opportunities out there in other countries, but what are the steps you have to go through to look into them? And to one of the points you made before, it might not be possible for everyone financially or time-wise, but I think what you said about the understanding the culture and really what it's like, and not just getting there and being shocked and leaving after a month, is, if that's the dream you want to follow, maybe you should try and get there for a month and just try and live somewhere for a month and just see, without a football contract, without a basketball contract, and just see if you can actually see yourself living there for a month. And I think that would help you prepare, moving forward.
Chris, absolutely. The second time I was working out in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the time when I then made my move across to Singapore and Taiwan, my financial situation wasn't great. I was using my overdraft. So I basically used the last £1,500 of my overdraft. And I went to Taiwan. I remember from the airport, I got in a taxi and I'm watching the taxi counter tick up. And I'm thinking, oh, Christ, how much is this going to cost? And I'm exchanging the currency and I'm thinking, oh, no. So already I was under that stress. But it's something I wanted to do. And I went and did it. And if you are prepared for 3 or 4 months, you can definitely make a go of it. Even as a player, if you went there, let's say as a semi-pro player, a decent semi-pro player to a country, and maybe you got qualified to teach English. So you could teach English in some schools, maybe start playing for a semi-pro club, and then maybe break through into the professional game that way. And you're still getting paid a salary from your English teaching, or you might even get a PE job like me, or a sports coaching job. These things are possible, and people are doing this. Foreign players, when I first was coaching in the Premier League in Taiwan, a lot of our foreign players were students on student visas, or they was working as a sport coach in football academies and playing. We wasn't paying, if any, money, probably like a bit of subsidy here and there or travel fare. And then some of them are now still playing in the top tier professionally with a professional salary. So they made that transition just by being in the region and getting their name known as a player. And Chris, as you mentioned, if you want to do it, enough people will find a way. Maybe you have to work in a factory or doing a job back home you don't like, while still playing a bit of football or basketball. If that's what you want to do, then you've got to put the work in there to make a possible better life here. It is possible. It's been done and will be done. Look, I was in the Philippines with Taj Minikan. He was a player at Meralco, a club where I was coaching. And yes, Taj came back. He had a bit of a reputation in Australia. Asian clubs and countries do like that. If you have got a bit of background, they're quite materialistic. They like seeing that on the CV. Then you can get a role with probably better salary, command a better salary. You get the free accommodation. You might get some food allowance. You get the transport all paid for. you get treated very well. Yes, you'll still have a bit of admin nightmares, logistical frustrations and everything. But our building, we lived in a apartment block. We had a swimming pool upstairs. We had a gymnasium. It was basically like living in a 4-star hotel. And that's everything you need. And then you step out and you're living in the Philippines. Amazing. You had all the holidays off. You know, you were around a group of people who are like-minded. So these are the things what these certain regions can offer. So if you're a pro or former pro in your country, no problem. You can find a way. Same with coaching. And also if you're, like I said, starting off, working in the factory, you might need to find a job. You can also make it work. Same with coaches. Graham Harvey, who was coaching Australia, he ended up coaching in Philippines with Kaya FC. Kaya FC now in the AFC tournament, so quite a good team. And now he's back, I think, with Brisbane Roar men's team as assistant coach. So that shows also, from a coach perspective, you can go out there to these countries and come back and still get employment in a country back home as well. Players, it may be different, but you may come back and get a lower level team. But for coaches, it's definitely you're definitely able to do it.
So many points to talk about on everything you just said then, but one of them that you just sort of finished on, which I find is interesting, but I do find is true as well, is as a player or a coach, if you've gone there and got experience in another country, and then you come back to your home country, I get the feeling that a lot of clubs, coaches, agents, whoever, they're going to look at you with a bit more higher thought, I suppose, than just a local player. So you know what I mean? Like, you've gone away, you've tried it, whether it's been a huge success or not, you've now come back with international experience, whether it be China, Philippines, Thailand. So now you're probably coming back as a better prospect than a kid who has just been a local player.
Now, on paper, and as you said, it makes total sense, yes. However, some don't see it that way. Some, let's say in England, UK, and a lot of coaches or players have this issue because it's really, it may be the same in Australia. Everything's within your closed circle. They may say, oh, you've been out the loop too long. Oh, yeah, have you been playing at that capacity? Have you been training right? But that's BS, because the reality is you've been playing football possibly in AFC Champions League competition or AFC Cup competitions. Every week you may have been playing against international players, where you might go back home to the 8th tier in England. You haven't been playing against any national team players. So, yes, look, some teams are weaker, some players are weaker, but you are playing against some better opposition, some better players. And as you said, Chris, you're getting experiences that you haven't got, playing against South Americans, playing against people who used to play under Sven-Goran Eriksson. You know, all these different experiences you can use back home. So traveling and playing in these environments, that's another thing. Difficult environments against these oppressed environments. Have you been paid for 2 months? Was the food different? Did you have to adapt to the heat, the weather? It is making you a better player if you use them to your advantage. So, look, I think with that, it's what you make it. Some people will look negative on it, but you can make it into a positive by showing it.
I think it makes you an all-round, not to say a better person, but a better, well-rounded person, having those tough experiences. Everyone I've spoke to, again, so far, it's the mentality of just to keep going. When things get tough, you need to keep going, and being put in situations like that, as it's a bit of sink or swim, I suppose, but that's what's going to help you mentally, you know, prepare for what comes next.
Absolutely, and more kind of understanding and more patient with people, perhaps. Whereas if you come, let's say, to Taiwan, people walk around and they're just quiet and they keep themselves to themselves. They're not used to kind of face-to-face confrontation, and they have ways of talking to people and doing things. Sometimes, yes, it's a little bit behind people's back, but you are learning how to deal with different people. Maybe in your team or in your workplace, you've got 3 or 4 different nationalities of Asians or South Americans or Europeans. So you are learning not to put everyone in the same box of said country, but you are learning how to work with and work against and deal with different cultures and to respect different cultures as well, which, again, if you are going to move to this region, you need to do your research. And although you may be stubborn or you may not be great at languages, you just got to make a little bit of effort, at least, just to try and gain a little bit of respect or show that you are making an effort to show respect to locals as well. You'll never become a local, which they can make that quite clear. But if you make an effort, it is noticed and it can put you in good stead.
One of the things actually, and again, I'll come back to Taj as a quick example. So from something that you said, so Taj, I don't know if you do know, I used to play with Taj many, many years ago. So I know Taj, he's going to become a guest shortly. He's going to give me his story on how it all worked, which would be interesting. But what you said about, I suppose, younger players with something on their CV that stands out to the Asian clubs. So Taj obviously played like for Australia. I think it was under 17s, under 20s. He had some A-League experience. So that obviously stands out. But what else stands out? So if you're a young player in Sydney, Brisbane, wherever, and you've got NPL experience, is that looked upon favourably if it's first-team NPL experience here, or is it more like an A-League youth team or a national team under 16s, 17s, 18s?
If you're looking at what you said with regards to the NPL and you're a younger player, you may have to back that up slightly. Have you played against some former A-League players? So you can say, yeah, I used to play against blah, 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 blah. Because if, let's say, China League One team, they might not really know what the NPL is. Whereas, if you can go there and be seen, I'm pretty sure in some countries, some clubs, you can show that your ability would be acceptable. So you would have to sell yourself a little bit more. But, that can be built on by going to maybe a less desirable country and club. Does someone want to go out to Mongolia? I've known people go out to Mongolia before and play in the Mongolian Premier League. Then, from Mongolia, you can then go to Hong Kong or somewhere because they see you've got that region experience at professional level. Now, if you look at the Hong Kong League, you've got some, and China League also, because China like to get mixed players, as in some Hong Kongese who may be Hong Kongese and Australian or UK. And the levels can contrast massively. So in the Hong Kong League, you may have someone who hasn't played at any level, but has been an okay youth player against someone who's played at, top European levels and now have dropped down because maybe they're settling in Hong Kong. So you have got that mixture of good quality, lesser quality, higher experience, lower experience. So for that example, I would say try and build your career from maybe less desirable countries, which again, the environment will be more difficult. We would get paid, I hope so, but maybe not on time all the time. There's leagues, there's Bangladesh, there's India, there's Sri Lanka. All these countries have football leagues. It's just whether or not you want to go and accept the terms or if you can get there and if you can last there. There's an English defender who's moved around Thailand and Indonesia, and he's played for Bali SC and Phuket. Who doesn't want to play and live in these areas? You finish training, you're by the beach already, some of the best beaches in the world. And the money you get in paid is very high for the area, the country, and also good to save some money as well. Yeah,
that can be. I think there definitely is money out there in Asia, isn't there? And potentially sometimes more than. I've had a chat recently with someone, and they were offered a deal back in the A-League, but they've stayed in Malaysia because they're earning way more money than what they could earn back here, and they've got a good lifestyle.
Absolutely, and look, if you can get that and you enjoy the lifestyle, there's no reason to come home. Now, as a young player or a young coach, and I would suggest this to coaches as well, because I kind of did that when I was working as a PE teacher, then I was coaching full-time without getting any money, really. I did that for 3 years. So when people say, oh, but I haven't got time, I haven't got the finances, that's rubbish, because I've done that. And I had to work, the 18-hour days for 3 years, traveling hours just to do a 1 hour, 10-minute training session. So I would say to coaches, can you get yourself in a situation where you can go to a country and maybe you won't get paid? Maybe you get a food allowance, or maybe you get paid a little bit of extra money for coaching in their academy. But you got your foot in. You might get first team coaching experience in a pro league or a Division 1 team, And that way, then you can build your CV, you can build your reputation. Again, if you can survive outside of that. And yeah, I've done it. I know it can be done. It's not easy. Otherwise, everyone will be moving there and getting league in the Chinese Super League and whatnot. But it's possible.
And do you find, touching quickly on like a visa situation that you mentioned before, for people to come into Asia, different countries will be different visas, different rules. But if you come into under a student or a teacher type role, so if you could get a job teaching or coaching in an academy, is that going to help you get a longer period of a visa rather than, say, a 90-day visa?
Yeah, if we take Taiwan, for example, you can come here and sign up to a Chinese course, and that will make you eligible to do some work and also play some football. So, you know, that it might be a 2-year course, it might be a 3-year course. You could renew it, you could get an apprenticeship, you could come here on a visit visa. So let's say Australia, UK, we get 60 or 90 days free entry. You could come here, sign up to a course while you're here, or get a job offer, although you're not legally meant to do it, but that's how it works. You get into the country first, same in China, and then the employer gives you a job offer, deals with all your visa and everything, and then you're a resident there. And then basically you're free to play football, you're free to start coaching and do what you want there. So yeah, it is possible, Chris. You can be a student, you can be a teacher. People worry too much about, how to do it before they get there, when most of the time you just need to get there first.
So because in most countries you can just go in for 90 days. So as you're saying, get there for the 90-day visa, work hard, do some networking, learn as much as you can about what's going to work for you, and it might take care of itself.
And that's why in China, if you can get to China now, they've opened their tourist visas. So I'll say this to any coaches who are thinking, I need to get out of Australia. And I'll say to UK coaches, get yourself to China. Tourist visas are now open. Yeah, but what happens if I don't get a job? If you go to these countries, I already know there's hundreds of jobs. There's schools in China, in regions, in areas, in cities. There's cities we don't even know about. And them cities have got thousands of schools, and each of them schools would love a foreigner to teach PE or to teach football or to coach football. And you go to Shanghai, if let's say you went to a coffee shop or an event or a bar, you would meet probably 50 foreigners which could point you in a direction of a job, a sport job, in certain cities. So, yeah, if you get there on a tourist visa, things will work out. And then, like in most countries, you see not the loopholes, but you see how things kind of work in regards to visas and getting residency and whatnot. And most of the time, that's where you get looked after by the employers as well. And you might have to leave the country again to re-enter, but once you're there, you're there.
And as you say, there's enough expats and foreigners there who have, like yourself, been there, done that. And that's, I suppose, your most important network is trying to meet as many people like yourself as possible.
Yeah, 100%. And there's a lot of not so good people out there who are looking out for themselves, but there's a lot of good people out there as well, which they might even say, look, I've got a job going at my place, or they'll certainly introduce you to someone else who can help. You do find close-knit communities, especially as a player, that if you come in, let's say, we call it the second tier here in Taiwan, if it can be called a second tier, but if you come and you shine as a foreigner here, and you're a top scorer, the likelihood is you will then get snapped up by a Premier League club in Taiwan. You get a pro contract. If you end up staying here, you get married to a Taiwanese or something, you could get, a residency, and then you could be neutralized to be a national team player. So the amount of players in certain Asian countries what are national team players, which should they really be professional players at all? I don't know. It could be questionable, but they're playing in World Cup qualifiers. So who's got the last laugh? And that's a possibility.
Yeah, it is. And I know a lot of those Asian countries over the years have had, many Brazilians or Spanish classified nationals now playing for their national team.
In the past, certain countries, China have had quite a lot of Brazilians. So where it could take a few years to get your papers and nationality, all of a sudden China's got 6 Brazilians playing, but yeah, I don't think that's happening as much now. But yeah, there was a time when they had quite a lot of Brazilians on their team sheet, which is great for the sport. But Chris, just to point out, for anyone listening and thinking of moving here, and maybe they've been in contact with an agent or a third party, or they know some agents, I would say you have to be very careful with kind of false promises or something what looks good on the package. People who are posting things on LinkedIn. Even myself with experience, I've had a couple of recent disasters. Even though, you know, I'm pretty difficult to, I would say, scam or con now. Sometimes it's out of your hands and things just don't happen. And if you get offered something too good to be true, the likelihood is it's too good to be true. Because you've got to also be realistic, okay? All of a sudden, if you're unknown and then a big club in Singapore want you to go in trial or something, you got to ask yourself why. And you know, do you know the agent? Have you got an actual face-to-face relationship with them over the years? Do you know the club? Is that how the country really works? Is that how recruitment works? You know, have you had... have they asked for your documents, you know, and you're handing over your driving license and passport and national insurance number? Are you paying a fee? Why are you paying for your own flights if it's a professional club? I see some adverts or people asking you to pay for your own flight and your own visa, but it's a professional club with a lot of money. Why are you paying for your own stuff to get over there? When you are over there, you know, you might not get your salary. There's been nightmare stories where players have not been paid. There's coaches from national teams who haven't been paid, and that's national team level. Now, we are protected, but you can take your case to certain organisations. It might take 1 or 2 years for it to be heard, to get compensation back, for it to go to trial and whatnot. So you do have to be careful. You have to be prepared for that. That might give you a negative view if you have one bad experience, but you shouldn't let it kind of hamper your dreams or your desire. But you do just have to be careful. And one thing in the sport, as you know, Chris, you know, it's business. In business and pretty much in life in general, people care about themselves more than they're ever going to care about you. So it might be all smiles and rainbows and unicorns and, oh, let me get you a SIM card. We're going to pick you up from the airport. Oh, yeah. Hey, come, we'll take you out for a free course food, free meal course on your first day to make you think it's amazing. And then slowly you start to see some cracks. And, you know, you might have to be ready with that. You might have to kind of just accept that could happen. The likelihood is it might happen and be ready for it. I used to place coaches in certain projects in certain countries, one of them being South Korea, working with sporting directors or owners of academies. And these owners would be the same. I'm sending British coaches, young British coaches, for an experience in South Korea, starting off great, then turns out to be a disaster, a nightmare, where the owner is then withholding money or threatening them with gangs and violence and everything, and trying to get one poor young lad in prison because he put a ball up his shirt and people said he was pretending to be pregnant and he wasn't. And just stories like this, and then it can quickly turn very nasty. So you have got to trust people, you have got to be careful, and you have got to trust your own feelings. If something doesn't feel right, maybe it isn't. For me, probably last year, I got offered a contract to go back out to one of the countries I've already worked in with a coaching team. Contract sorted, everything, team there. We're talking about transfer targets. We're actually talking with the players and their agents, just like proper professional coaches, like everyone dreams about again. And then all of a sudden, the agent who's dealing with us just changes all of the terms and says, oh, no, actually, you're not getting that. Oh, no. Oh, but we've got a contract. We've got an agreement. Oh, no, but we're changing it now. And this is the same agent who we knew was suing clubs and suing players because he was incompetent in his job out of embarrassment. So you do get these characters who might pretend that, oh, great, we'll work together, yeah, and then we'll move you from this club to this club, and, we'll be a team. You'll get these promises. And some of them, yeah, okay, great, if you find a good one. Some of them, it's terrible, and it can turn bad very quickly. But let's say Bangladesh, I was meant to go to Bangladesh. Chris, I talked to you about it. They cancelled the tournament, this women's professional Premier League tournament, 4 times. So coaches and players and myself had recruited players to go over there. We had offer letters, everything agreed. They cancelled the whole tournament 4 different times and ended up not going. So imagine people with families, or they made arrangements and everything. Myself, I've made arrangements. I lost money. I was getting people to substitute my coaching work or whatever I was doing, and then ended up not going. So these are things what are happening to me, which I know they can happen, but they still happen to me. So it might, it could quite happen to someone who may not be aware of some of the things as well. So you have got to be very cautious, but not too guarded, but just be aware of some of the things which may happen and might happen when you're out there as well.
And is there anywhere, and there's probably not, because there's not obviously a playbook for this, but is there any good resources that you would recommend people look like, whether that's potential job boards, or I know you've mentioned LinkedIn a few times, obviously there's, people can put anything on there, but where would you recommend people go to start the networking process, but also try and guide them in the right direction of a good resource page or pages in regards to what would be needed, or who they potentially could reach out to that they can trust?
Ideally, it needs to be with trusted companies who have got a proven track record of working with players, coaches, and who are still in good relationships with them. Maybe they've got some accreditations from them, people giving a paragraph saying, yeah, blah, 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 okay, they did this for me. Maybe they show everything. You go on their website, you see the client list, you see social media posts from their players or coaches saying, big thanks to Sunshine management team who have got me another role and everything. So these are the teams that you want to trust with your career or trying to find you a role. Look, it's not to say things might not fall through, but the first thing is you need trustworthy people on your team. Otherwise, it's doomed from the beginning. So in terms of that, LinkedIn is a great place to find these organizations and teams. And also, if you just do a Google search and then look through websites, and then when you look at websites, just try and confirm everything with a bit of research as well. Try and find out the track record. Maybe talk to some of their clients from the client list if you can and say, hey, I'll use them the Sunshine management team. How did it go? Did they get you opportunities? Was the opportunities good to their promise? There's only so much that these third parties can do. You could go then to the team or a club and it might be a total nightmare. And look, I've been to professional places where some places may pay you in cash. How are you going to get cash out of the country? This is where probably your services, Chris, comes into play. Massive thing. How do you get cash out of the country? What happens if you don't get paid? Who deals with that? What happens if your passport gets stolen? You do need someone to be able to contact someone on your behalf, because it's a bit intimidating as a player to speak out when you're meant to be doing a job or a coach, and then you fall out with the management or the owners. So it is good to have a neutral person on your behalf who maybe knows the landscape a bit better as well.
And that would be, coming back to that point, sort of reaching out and finding an agent with experience in that region specifically. And then I was going to actually suggest that's what I would do. I would reach out to players. If someone's got a testimonial on their website, I'd find that player myself and send him like Taj. I spoke to Taj. He's got great things to say about the Philippines. So I know if I was ever to go, all right, I've got a kid, I know I can send him to this club through this management company, because you physically know someone that's been there and done it.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yes, testimonial, that's the word I was looking for. So, yeah, that will speak volumes. And it's not easy to find these organizations because they want to make money as well, and they want the best players or coaches. They want to, find them the opportunities. But, if you can, okay, great. It might just be someone who's already living in that region. and you can touch base with, and they can help you settle, which I do with some people in Taiwan. And it may be people who haven't got this kind of celebrity name or background where you have to, unfortunately, do trial and error, which is what I did. I had a lot of disappointments, but, I found that to be quite fun. And then I just kept on evolving and learning, and now I'm able to kind of offer some experience to others who are maybe following the same path. So at the same time, there are some nightmares, but don't let that make you afraid to try as well. Look, when your career or family earnings is on the line, it can be different. It gets serious. Like when you're playing for your win bonus, or in Asia, you could get fired after 3 losses in a row. There's a lot of pressure. But also, if you haven't got that pressure, you haven't got that dependability on people back home, from people back home, you can go and do a little bit of trial and error as well.
And do you have, over here in Australia, we've got the PFA, so the Professional Football Association, and we do a lot of work with them and the players, and they're great in the fact that they'll introduce, so for us, for currency, they'll introduce the players to help them with currency and banking. We've got someone that helps them with the sort of tax and being a resident or non-resident. So the PFA will guide them, to trusted sources to help them in all these situations. When you're in Asia and different places, do they have that type of association that you can lean on a little bit in some countries, or not at all? Or is it more so driven through your agent as your point of contact?
Great point. If there are these type of organizations, they don't hold much power, or most of them don't. Certain countries in Asia can be a law upon itself. It doesn't even matter what's said in the contract. If you're in certain countries, in certain regions or cities, they have their own rules. The owner might be a friend of a friend of a friend. And look, you might not be able to get help from anywhere, which is why they can basically get away with a lot of things. Even your agent or your management team might not be able to help you, and that's just the way it is. But like in every country, look, Europe, UK, even possibly Australia isn't untouched by these type of things. And you're up against it, you're never going to win. And this is why, like I said previously, you have to trust your original feeling. And if something feels really wrong, get out of there. We played in matches where it would end. We'll go to a city which is basically run outside of the government and governed by its own rules, where they fix the match, which is obvious because you go in and they've got more armoured police with shields and batons than they have crowd. They cheat in the game, then there's a mass brawl after the game. Everyone's fighting, police are beating us, and then after, the FA doesn't charge anyone, and there's no fines or anything, and it's just forgotten about and never mentioned again. So things can be hidden and made to disappear as well, which is quite scary at the same time. So this is where you do need to, try and identify when something's wrong as soon as possible, and maybe look after your own well-being ahead of anything else. You can then complain back home. Look, in the UK, unless you're a high-profile player or coach, they're probably not interested. You can go to, is it Fifth Pro or someone like that. They are interested, they do care, but it could take years to get any kind of compensation back as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So in, say, England, and you've got experience there with a lot of Spanish and Serbian coaches, when they come, do they have a governing body? I'm sure the UK do with the PFA as well, but Spain, do they have their own governing bodies, which you generally find help them to a certain extent to get over there and set up? And I suppose they've got a point of contact somewhere?
Yeah, they normally have like a good point of contact who try and support them as much as possible. A good community, let's say, of coaches. However, again, things what happen actually there's not much they can do about it. And that's one thing with some countries in these regions. It can be a different law. If they decide to change something, then it's changed. If they set a rule, but the rules say this, it doesn't matter. These are the new rules now. And I guess some people find that one of the fun things about the region, but also it can be quite detrimental to a lot of things as well.
Quite stressful, I guess, as well for people.
Yeah, it can be, yeah.
And do you find with, like touching on coaches a little bit, do you find that when you find a group of foreign coaches, whether they're Spanish, Serbian, Brazilian, American, Australian, is there a good network there that you try and help each other, bounce ideas of each other, tell each other what's been going on, so that you mean like a group mentality of trying to help each other through these situations?
There is, to the point, if you're in a job already and you're safe. Whereas if you're looking for a job or a new role and it's really competitive, like everywhere, I guess, you probably find information being withheld a little bit, or you don't really look out for each other as much. But one thing, if someone has had bad experiences, let's say with a company, a coaching company or a school or even a club or an agent, you do find that people will try and look after people a lot more in terms of this. For example, now, privately, I will tell everyone, the people, about which agent not to trust in certain regions, or companies who I've had bad experiences with, schools and employers as well. Because when you're talking to someone, if you don't warn someone about it and then they go out and find out themselves, they think, why on earth didn't you mention that when we were talking? Yeah. That is one thing that, people do look out for, any negative experiences. But in terms of trying to get an opportunity, if they're fighting for the same one, it can be quite difficult to build some trust in that respect.
It sounds like obviously there's a lot of risk, but a lot of reward potentially as well. No doubt, like anywhere, 90% of the time it's probably good, and you always have the bad egg or the bad apple, or the 10% that are doing the wrong thing. But I think from an overall experience, from what you've said, it sounds like trying to make some sort of career, and it doesn't have to be football; it can be basketball, as you say, in Asia, is a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, and personally, of course, for me, I might be biased. The risk, it's definitely worth the possible reward. Now, the good thing is, if you are going to play or coach in a certain sport, because you're doing it a little bit for the money, you want to send money home, you want to support your family, you want a bit of a savings for when you retire, the likelihood is it's probably at the higher end of the spectrum. There's more exposure to the club. It might be a top team in one of the top leagues where they can't get away with as much. So you are looked after. Whereas the lower down you go, it can get a little bit more cowboy rules. But the good thing is, you might be, not that it makes it any more right, but you might be a younger person. You might have less people depending on the salary that you're not getting paid or which has been reduced. And it is less stress. So if you are getting the better salary, you're probably at a bigger club, a more well-known club, or a higher profile country. If you're getting a lower one, or you're accepting a lower one, or you're getting treated, not as good, it's because you're trying to make your way through the system. You're trying to build your CV, and you have to expect these kind of things might happen. And like I said, there was a national team coaches, a team of coaches what went there, and they was owed 3 or 4 months salary, and they ended up leaving, and they were still owed that salary from the federation. So it still can happen to professionals. But if it's like a high profile club, the club don't want to run that risk of getting a bad reputation as well.
Yeah, I guess because for them it's a business, as you say, it's a business. So for them, to keep players coming in, to keep foreigners coming in, if that's what they want, they have to treat them well. But I understand at the lower leagues and the lower levels, that's potentially at the whim of an eccentric owner. But the higher you go, it's probably a little bit more streamlined. And on that point, you've mentioned it before, but talking about like people getting paid and the money, do you find a lot of it people do get paid in cash, or do you find that they are paid into bank accounts, or does that again come to the levels of the leagues or the countries you're in?
I think it can depend on the country. I've heard and I know of some, let's say, clubs paying in cash, and they've ended up with suitcases full of cash under their bed and then losing the contract or getting fired and having no way to get it out of the country. And then they end up basically being like a cash smuggler through the airport with the risk of losing a lot of it. In certain countries, even if you got residency, it is so difficult to move it out of the country. through their banking systems because they want to try and keep the country secure in their own system. Again, the higher profile teams and players will have, certain people around them which can set this up. Some people who haven't, it could be cash. You could be left to figure it out yourself. And that is one important thing to try and get squared away, to work out before you do make the move. Even over years for myself in Asia, I was always better in a way where I can have people send money to me from back home. It might even be for birthday, a gift from family or friends, or me sending likewise back to the UK. I was always upgrading or finding out a new way of how to do it, which was better for me. But that's certainly one thing you would need to try and research and have prepared before you go, because you could go there and, like I said, people could be left with a load of cash and not knowing what to do with it and having no way how to get it out of the country.
On that point, if you went to Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, and they do pay you in cash, can you, because you're there on some sort of visa or you're a player, you've got a contract, can you open up a bank account and deposit that cash in there?
You can, yes. Now, this also comes down to, and this is where it gets a little bit grey, a little bit murky. Half the time, if you're a professional coach or player, you don't even know what visa you're on because the club might be dealing with it. And clubs may have certain loopholes and they have, some certain people what get things done quickly. You may end up making a quick trip to another country and doing an airport run, and then all of a sudden you're a resident. These things happen, so you don't really know the full details on what you can say and what you can't say. For example, in the Philippines, I went there, was given a bank account. The club set up a bank account. They were great with us. Same club as Taj was with. You got paid your money into the bank account. Excellent, no problem. I think I've still got my Philippines bank card now, which still works. So no issues there. Other countries, at the time it was, Western Union, which even then was a total nightmare getting out of the country. And you needed a local person who could only send so much at a time for you. And sometimes they didn't want to do it. So sometimes even if you have got a visa, it's a wrong visa to get a bank account because it's not a resident visa, it's a professional visa, which professional players get in countries such as China. So it does depend what visa you're on, and this does give some power over the clubs because they know what visa you're on, they know what rights you have, and if they're limited, it gives them the power to say, I don't know, or I don't care. And then, we did pay you, but it's not actually written down on paper, or there's no paper trail to say that you have received any salary or not. And then there's questions asked. Okay, why is there no record? And then tax questions might start to be asked, and then back home, everything, it can get messy quickly. So, clubs, organizations can use that to their advantage. Some clubs, great, like I said, the Philippines, no problem, it's set up. Other countries, you've got no idea what visa you're on. So this is probably a good thing to ask before. If you care, some people just want to go and play or coach. But if you want to make sure, you can ask, okay, what visa am I going to be on? What rights do I get under that visa?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And an interesting one as well. We've found it recently that we've got players going into Asia or the Middle East without banking, and before they leave the country, they need to set it up, and that's what we've been able to sort of help them to then collect funds. But something else I've found quite common in Asia, not so much anywhere else, is your contract is written in US dollars. So just say it's $100,000 US dollars, $200,000 US dollars, but you get paid in the local currency of the equivalent of that. So you're not getting US dollars, you might be getting Malaysian ringgit or Indonesian rupiah. And then it becomes more of a problem as well because you've got a couple of currency transfers to deal with. And if you've got the local currency, it's harder to move it out rather than US. So I'll always recommend to people, if you can get paid in US, get paid in US. But a lot of the time we're finding it's out of people's hands as well. The club will pay you how they want to pay you.
Yeah, that's very common as well, Chris. You're right. And the first thing, just get paid. if possible, get paid in US dollar would be great.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. It's like, and it's interesting to. That's why, again, another reason around this is trying to educate people around all these little things that just to be aware of. As I said, 90% of the time, hopefully, it's going to be a fantastic and wonderful experience. But this can hopefully help you along the way. Is trying to preempt all these little things. As you said, find out about your visa. Do you maybe need to get a student visa and do a bit of work? Find about your banking, and hopefully that'll help you with a bit of off-field drama, to save a bit of trouble that you can then focus on just playing and trying to settle into a new country, which will be hard enough to begin with.
100%. That's the last thing you need is all of this stuff going on when you're trying to focus on playing or coaching. Definitely.
No, mate, that is fantastic. We've covered so much. As I thought we would. I knew with all your experience in these different countries, you'd have some fantastic insights and experiences to share. So thank you very, very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
No worries, Chris. I'm sure, like your experience, could talk for hours and hours. Yeah. I'm going to go and do some coaching now, actually. So great timing. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, Chris.
No problem at all. I appreciate it. Thanks, Matt.